The Lidl sponsored Comórtas Pella Páidí O'Shea takes place from the 21st to the 23rd of February. It is supported by McKeever Sports, EJ Menswear, Kerry County Council Tourism Unit and Lee Strand Milk. And I'm delighted to say that Tommy Walsh is with us in studio. How are you getting on, Tommy?
Good on, how are you?
Good to see you.
Thanks very much. Good
you
to
were
be here.
just telling us there that you didn't partake in the festivities around Christmas. You didn't go to Thailand with the Kerry team.
No, I didn't. I had a couple of things on over Christmas, so I stuck around, but I did a good time by all accounts.
They were down in Koh Samui.
They were, yeah. They were down in Koh Samui for a couple of days and other parts of Thailand as well. It's nice weather this time of year and they had a well-deserved break.
None of the Instagrams managed to make kind of a public sphere during their trip. The Koh Samui Cup, of course, before Christmas was one of the things that went viral. As soon as you said that, it triggered in my head. I was like, did we miss out on the second running of the Koh Samui Cup by any chance?
Possibly. None of it went viral or anything, but they were well warned before they went. But yeah, no, look, I think they got away for a couple of days, and when you're together like a group like that, you're always going to have a bit of fun. But yeah, so it was well earned, and it's back to work now and getting ready for the season ahead.
What does a holiday around the start of the year entail? There was some rumours that they were training even over a little bit in Thailand. I'm not sure, was that true?
Yeah, it's probably difficult to fit in because in Kerry we have district championships that run right through to December, and obviously the National League. The National League is starting at the end of January. We'd guys involved with their clubs and things like that. So it is a very tricky time to try and fit a holiday in. But you just try and have to balance it. You know, while you want to have a good time over there, you still have to look after yourself because when you come back, the training is going to be flat out and you need to be ready to go again. So it's I think I'm not sure if there was anything organised from a group point of view, but guys did their own thing, I'm sure.
Does pre-season these days entail the sort of horrific running and the very tough attitude towards life, I guess, that it did, say, 10, 15 years ago? Like, I guess you mentioned the length of the season now. Yeah. You don't let yourself get out of shape at all, I'd imagine. Yeah,
well, as I said, in Kerry, the club stuff runs pretty much all year round. So, it's difficult to get the opportunity as a whole group to do that type of running and get that type of base in. it's like the guys now are only back from holiday, so I suppose we haven't an awful lot done and to try and be ready for a game this weekend. But again, it's as I said, it's trying to find a balance. You've guys that are away with their clubs, Sigerson, different things like that. So it's you're probably trying to manage guys individually and get guys in the best shape that they can be in before the season kicks off.
How much did you enjoy playing with Kerry last year?
I did, yeah. I enjoyed it. It was great. It was great to be back. When I had left a couple of years ago, I wasn't really sure if I was going to get the chance to play again. It wasn't necessarily something I was looking to do. I went back with my club, Kerns Rathleys, and had a decent year. And luckily enough, Peter asked me to come back in. So I jumped at it really, and was glad I went back in. Obviously, the season didn't work out the way we would have liked. We lost both the National League final and the All-Ireland final, but I suppose from a personal point of view it was enjoyable at the same time.
Yeah, it doesn't seem whatsoever that it's a winter of discontent in Kerry. It feels that there was a definite step forward last year. Like you'll in the camp obviously realise that winning the All-Ireland is the only thing that matters for you, but was there still a sense of consolation from the fact that there was a step forward in 2019?
I wouldn't say there's consolation. Like certainly there was a lot of goodwill from the supporters down there towards the team, and you can't underestimate that either. But like Kerry teams will only ever be judged on how they perform this summer, and look, we fell short in the final, which is disappointing. But we have to try and learn from it. A lot of guys kind of went to another level last year, but it's up to everyone to continue to grow again. There's guys that underneath that need to step up. The guys that are at the forefront of the squad need to step up as well, because ultimately we fell short, so it's trying to bridge that gap.
The All-Ireland finals was an interesting period for you, in our view anyway. Your name came up quite a bit in the match preview for both games. I'm not sure, was it a big deal in the camp at all? Was there a lot of conversations about whether or not you'd start? Because I think that talk intensified in the media between the two finals.
Yeah, I suppose you tend not to pay too much attention to what's going on outside, but look, I was like anybody else. I wanted to start the games. I was pushing as hard as I could to start. Now, at the same time, while I didn't start, I could understand the reasoning for not starting me also, and trying to get an impact off the bench. That's up to Peter and the lads. They go with who they think is going to be best on the day, and I completely understood that decision also, and while it was disappointing, I would have loved to have started either of the games, but you do what's best for the team.
It's interesting looking at how you approached that replay, there was obviously a lot of long balls going into, I think Paul Ganey was probably the only full forward, or the only person in the full forward line for a lot of those early stages. Is that something, do you think, that'll start coming back into Gaelic games now over the next couple of years with the advanced mark, the Route 1 sort of avenue that yourself and Kieran Donaghy would have used so well in 2009?
Yeah, I think so. I know there's been a lot of people talking about the mark, but myself, I think it's I think it's a good rule. I think it will certainly encourage people to kick the ball. I think any rule that rewards teams that are going to kick the ball, whether it be to guy on the lead or in long to 50-50, I think that's a positive thing. I think it's fielding is a feature of our game that probably has gone out of it a little bit. So I think any rule that is going to encourage that is positive. And I think if a guy gets the ball around the middle with this new rule, I think he's much more likely to have a look up and see what's inside. And if there's a long one-on-one, particularly if you've good ball winners, I think you're going to take that more often, take that option more often than you would have previously. Yeah,
I'm sure it was frustrating for someone like yourself, maybe playing in the inside and you'd have a blanket defence or at least two men marking you for a period. That's probably... Like, at the same time, you could look at that and say, well, at least if you win the clean ball, you get a huge reward from it. At the same time, you might think to yourself, well, that double marking could potentially come back into the game a little bit, or is there a propensity for more defensive men behind the ball?
Well, I think with the way defences are set up now, they're very good at marking or guarding the dangerous area, which is the D. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of easy marks right in front of goal that fellas are going to be able to tap it over. I don't think... While it's a rule I agree with, and I think some teams will probably be better at using it than others, I don't think it's going to be a massive feature. I don't think it's going to change games hugely. I think if you see 4 or 5 of them in a game, I think that would be an awful lot. So, but I think what it will encourage is teams, if they're able to transition the ball from defence to attack really quickly with their feet, I think that's where you'll get joy from it. And if you can get it from midfield into the full forward line with 2 or 3 kicks from your defence, I think that's where teams will see the benefit of it.
Were you instructed to play a little bit deeper last year or play a little bit wider? Because you mentioned the D last year, and I think there was a couple of games in the league where you picked your marks up away from goal a good bit. You were left with a tight angle for the free, and then perhaps in the championship bit you were actually playing outside the 21 at least, or at least coming deep to win your own ball.
Yeah, well, I think with the mark it can often be a different run, whereas you're not running more of an angle. You're coming more at the ball to try and get to it before it bounces. So that's probably in the league I found myself nearly out of position because I was marking it almost 30 or 40 yards at an angle away from goal. But I suppose myself, I was still kind of getting used to that rule from a Gaelic football perspective. So I think more often than not, if guys take it, they're probably just going to play on now rather than step back and try and shoot from that distance. It's
going to be interesting though. Hopefully it does have the big impact, because I think a lot of people were a little bit unsure about it last year. Were teams actually implementing it for the league because it'd be gone in the championship and then your plans go out the window? That's been a subject of conversation that's come up quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. The other subject, and I'd be very keen to get your take on this, is the AFL has come right back into view again with Colin McShane going for trials down under. As a player like Colin McShane, first of all, he looks like a player who'd make it down there. He's a big fella, he's well able to look after himself, but he's also technically excellent. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget, that you have to have that technical capability to actually take to a new shaped ball very quickly.
Well, I think with someone like Cahill, he's like what they'd call over there as a key position player. So he covers the ground quite well. He's very good hands, a good ball winner. So you actually need to be very good technically to play in those positions, where most of the positions over there, and you'll see the likes of Mark O'Connor, Zach Toohey, Pierce Hanley, those type of positions, you have to be an unbelievable athlete, and a lot of those guys going over were naturally good athletes anyway. I think Mark O'Connor went over there and he was winning time trials before he even got into training. So while they do look at you technically, you also need to be a very good athlete going over, and I wouldn't know Cahill that well, but just from seeing him in the championship last year, he certainly looks like someone that could be successful over there.
What's the biggest challenge to somebody who goes down there?
It's probably the fact that you're on your team. You're probably one of the main players there, and then you go down there and you're right down at the bottom. And it's trying to build your way back up again. And particularly, I suppose, as you get a bit older, it probably gets harder. I think I was 21 when I went, and I was probably one of the older guys that had gone over there. And I think Cahill's a bit older than me again, so it's that's probably a challenge. And of course, you're away from home. There's trying to get used to from that point of view as well. You don't have the same support structures that you have here, friends, family. So it is tough. Like of course, when you're looking at it, you're a professional sports person, and there's all the benefits that come with that. It's a great lifestyle, but there's difficult parts to it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Like, it's a very interesting point that you make, that suddenly you are almost at the bottom of the pile. There's almost like a comparison there with the young soccer players who go over to England and they're absolutely flying as one of the best players in the country. Yeah. And they go into an academy or an underage setup and they're at the very bottom. Almost the intimidation of the talents around you can be a tough thing.
Yeah, and like you're coming over there, and like you would be heavily involved with, say, development coaches and guys that are trying to get you technically up to scratch, whereas you mightn't have a lot to do with the first team maybe, and that first year especially is almost like just a pure learning year. Whereas I know myself when I went over, and I'm sure all the other guys that went there the same, you want to go over and make an immediate impact, which isn't always going to be the case. So you have to be patient, you have to bide your time. Of the guys that go over, very few actually play in their first year. A couple have, and that's been an unbelievable achievement to do that. But as I said, like it does take a lot of work to get up to the level that you need to be at. And that first year, where you're trying to adjust your body, get the skills right at the same time, adjust with being away from home, it's a difficult 12 months.
It was interesting listening to Mickey Hart's comments about Colin McShane at the time. You can totally understand, I think, why an inter-county manager will be looking after their own interests and tries to have a conversation with their players to why they don't go. But then he was kind of saying things about the option of staying at home as a better one, that players come back from Australia battered and bruised and their body is broken, which, I don't know, I'm again very keen to get your take on that, because obviously you came back with a serious injury, or you sustained a serious injury down there. But it's not the general case. Not everybody is coming back battered and bruised. Like, I'm sure that was a freak thing, that nobody's trying to get you injured in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was, I was probably unlucky down there with injuries. I picked up, a couple of different things, and obviously the hamstring thing was pretty serious. It pretty much wiped me out for 12 months, and it took me a long time to recover from that. I don't think that's the case. I think if any of the guys over there were to come back now, I think they'd all be better for it. They're all unbelievable athletes with an unbelievable sporting experience behind them. I think more often than not, the guys that have come back have done well. If you look at Ty Kennelly, Matty Clark, like, they both came back and did really, really, really well. So I think, while some guys will come back and they'll have picked up injuries, Kieran Byrne, Kieran Sheahan had a lot of injuries also. But he's back in the Cork setup this year, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. But I wouldn't say that everyone comes back battered and bruised. There's two sides to it. Having
kind of cleared the injury problems at this point, I think, looking from the outside in, last year was probably a very important year for you, first full year of inter-county football since Australia, being on the forefront of a panel that was challenging for an All-Ireland. Was it only last year that you psychologically fully got back to your best, back to the Tommy Walsh that we saw before he left?
No, I wouldn't say I'm the same player as before I left. I wouldn't have the same. Not that I had a burst of speed anyway, but as I suppose you push into your 30s, you probably lose a bit of that.
But psychologically, I guess the confidence, the swagger.
Yeah. Like I had been playing club football for 12 months previously, injury free, so that did a lot for my confidence. And then once I had the first couple of league games under my belt, and I felt that I could still play at that level, that was obviously huge for my confidence. And as the year went on, then I was able to kind of build on it and thankfully contribute towards the end of the year.
What was the hardest part about that whole injury period, or even the post-injury period? Like, I'm sure there was a couple of doubts about whether or not a season like last year would happen.
I suppose it's just a frustration, like you're I think the year after I was away from the Kerry setup, I didn't really play any football with my club. I was just picking up injury after injury. My hamstring was still causing me a lot of problems, so there was that frustration. And though I didn't really doubt myself that I would be able to get back and at least play club football, I think a lot of people would have. A lot of people would have said that he should just pack it in or whatever, and not necessarily to my face, but you would have heard kind of whispers. So I suppose to eventually get back to a level where I felt that I could get to, and and as I said, I wasn't necessarily trying to get back in the Kerry setup, but to eventually end back up there, it was it was, I suppose, a nice reward for the work that I put in to get back.
It's interesting that you still had the hamstring problems. Yeah. Was there a specific doctor you saw or anything that you managed to help fix that?
I don't think that'll ever go away, being honest. It's always something I'll have to manage. It was a pretty significant injury, and if I don't stay on top of it, it could come back
How do you stay on top of it? Is there
just rehab? There's hamstring specific exercises that I need to do before training, after training, stretching, different things like that. And the physios inside with Kerry, Kieran Shea, he's been very good in fairness to him. He knows the history of it. So if there is anything that I need to step out of or manage it, they're always on top of that.
It's amazing, isn't it, that so almost trying to learn how to live with that sort of injury is the most important part.
Yeah, and I think if something serious happened to the hamstring again, that could be it. So I really have to keep an eye on it.
Could I ask you, and this is the last question on the injury, I promise, what did it feel like when it happened? Like, they talk about it being one of the more excruciating injuries.
Yeah, it just, I know some people talk about hamstring injuries like they feel like they got shot in the leg, and that's what it felt like. It was right up on the top of the hamstring. I knew straight away that it was something significant. And just I couldn't really put any weight in it. A couple of guys came on, they didn't give me any stretcher, they just carried me off the field.
Jesus.
But look, I was told pretty much straight away how serious it was and that it was going to take a long time to come back from. So I think when a serious injury like that happened, you're always pretty positive at the start, but it's when you get into the rehab and you realise actually this is going to take a lot of time, that's probably when it gets tougher. But I was probably lucky in a way that I was over there because I was able to rehab it full time. I wasn't dealing with study or work or anything like that. I was able to just put my whole focus was to try and get the hamstring right.
Are you looking forward to going back to Croke Park this weekend?
Yeah, it's a nice start, and while I said before, like, we have been on the holiday and we haven't an awful lot done, it's still anytime you get to go up to Croke Park and play Dublin, it's always a great occasion. So we are looking forward to it.
Like, of course, it's the start of the league. They're missing a lot of players. You're missing a lot of players. But still, it'll be nice to get one over them in Croke Park. I suppose the league final a few years ago was the last time that's happened.
Yeah. It's, as I said, look, all that matters really in the season is what happens in the summer, but all these games are building blocks towards that. So it's it'll be a good test for fellas again to see where they're at. There'll probably be a couple of new faces again, so just to see if those guys can, push their way into the squad. So it's while it obviously isn't as significant as last September, it's still an important game for us.
How close do you feel to the Dubs?
Yeah, sure. What do we lose the replay away?
Yeah.
No, look, they're a serious team, in fairness. And it's, I think, we have to improve on a lot of things if we're going to match them. We feel that we can. We feel that on any given day that we have the players and the strength and conditioning and all that behind us to match them. But it's you need to put that all together, and we'll be working on that over the next couple of months. And obviously, look, there's other teams there as well. It isn't all just about beating Dublin. Mayo are going to come back. Tyrone weren't too far away this year. So there are a lot of teams that are kind of on that next level that are trying to catch Dublin, and we're no different.
Yeah, well, hopefully anyway, there will be a couple of teams joining yourselves in the chase for Sam this year, and hopefully it'll be another great season. Tommy, great to chat to you. Thanks a million for popping in the studio. Very best of luck this weekend. Just to mention again that the Lidl sponsored Comórtas Pella Páidí O'Shea, which is supported by McKeever Sports, EJ Menswear, the Kerry County Council Tourism Unit and Lee Strand Milk, takes place from the 21st to the 23rd of February.